Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Catching the Facts, an uncensored view of D1 college football. I'm your host, Dan Sisk.
And I'm Schroeder.
We have a couple really good games to talk to you guys about today. First, we have Penn State versus Minnesota. Then we have Pitt versus Louisville. We have Ohio State versus Indiana. We have Ole Miss versus Florida. And we have Alabama versus Oklahoma. So, Eric, how about we get started?
All right, so Penn State wins by 1 point, 26-25 in Minnesota. Penn State had 361 total yards, 244 passing, 117 rushing. And then Minnesota had 281 total yards, 175 passing, and 106 rushing. Penn State started off really slow on defense.
The first quarter was rough to watch.
It was. They started off slow, allowing a touchdown on the first drive.
Yep.
It just wasn't good. They finally get points in the second quarter when Omari Evans scores the wide-open touchdown. But up to that point, Minnesota's defense just played great. It was a defensive battle.
Yeah, and it was a defense. I mean, down to Penn State's second touchdown in the second quarter was blocked. And they blocked the extra point, Minnesota ran back for a 2-point conversion. Yeah. So, it was 19-16 going into the half, and I was pretty concerned. But yeah, Penn State turned it around in the second quarter. It really was a defensive battle. Interconference games like that on the road are very, very difficult. You hear that all the time in the SEC when Georgia struggles against Kentucky, and Georgia goes on the road, and they talk about in the post game that Kentucky's a real tough place to play. It's a similar thing in the Big Ten, but I would argue that it's not nearly as difficult as the SEC was. So to see Penn State struggle like this was a little odd, but then you think about it, and you're like, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. I feel the offense started to turn it around a little bit. They utilized Aller pretty well. Mm-hmm. He had a decent game, 244 passing yards and a TD. Didn't make too many mistakes, which was refreshing. I would have liked to have seen the offense do a lot with Brosmer's interception in the second half, but they didn't really do much with it. Warren had a decent game. I mean, yeah, it was a run-of-the-mill interconference Big Ten game against an okay team. Frankly, I'm shocked that with the new 8 people, Notre Dame didn't hop Penn State. I would have moved Notre Dame up to 4 after their decisive win against Army last night. But yeah, Penn State remains at 4. At least in the 8 people, we'll see what the playoff committee decides on Tuesday. But it was definitely interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, Minnesota's special teams played really good. Obviously with the blocked punt as well in the first half.
That was...
Which set up a touchdown with a minute to go in the second.
It did.
Brosmer flipped it to Darius Taylor. Taylor flipped it to Daniel Jackson, who flipped it back to Brosmer. Then he found a wide-open Jameson Gears.
Yeah.
And that's just one of those plays where you don't know what's coming. When they flip it around 3 times, you don't know if
There's a lot of flips.
Yeah, a lot of flipping.
It was a lot of flips.
You don't know who's going to take off and run or whatever, but...
Yeah, that was the play where I was legitimately starting to think, oh, wait, you guys may not have been as prepared.
Because they had momentum going into the second half.
They did. And the fake punt in the fourth quarter was so well executed. That decided the game. I mean, that was huge, and it was a really good play on Franklin's part. But, this offense needs work.
Yeah. I mean, Tyler Warren, they finally did get him involved once again.
But it took the second half. They didn't get him running until the second half. Yeah. Even though the second half was where they scored less points. He's not responsible for their points, but he was responsible for less possession time for Minnesota in the second half.
Yeah, he was setting up the touchdowns.
He did, yeah. Yeah, I mean, not much to say about this, honestly, Eric. I feel the game was pretty standard Big Ten conference play.
Yeah.
I'm not super concerned right at this moment for Penn State, at least in terms of the regular season, because they have Maryland next week, and that should be a decisive win, especially after Maryland just got flacked this past weekend as well. It's looking like Penn State's going to finish 5th, or excuse me, 6th, because obviously the Oregon OSU winner in the Big Ten title game, which is probably what it's going to be unless Ohio State loses next week to Michigan at home, which is not going to happen. But right now it's looking like Oregon OSU is going to be the Big Ten title game. Winner of that game is obviously going to be the 1 seed, and they'll probably move, and they'll move the loser down to 5th. So Penn State's pretty much locked the 6th seed at this point. They're going to host a playoff game. We'll see who it is. I don't know. There was so much chaos this past weekend that it's still really, really difficult to see exactly what the big picture is going to be. But if I had to put money on it, this is kind of foreshadowing a conversation we're going to have in a bit. But it's probably going to be Arizona State.
Yeah,
probably who Penn State hosts. And we'll see how that works out. But yeah, Penn State's clinched. Pretty much clinched a home first round game, and we'll see how it works out. But there's really nothing much to say.
They're in a good spot.
They are. But they're not in a great spot. They're in a solid spot.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, the Big Ten right now, there's like probably 2-3 good teams in the Big Ten, like really good.
Yeah.
With Oregon and Ohio State. Penn State is
No,
right now.
There is Oregon and Ohio State, a gap.
Yeah.
Penn State, a substantial gap.
And then everybody else.
Like, there's a gap between Oregon, OSU, and Penn State, and then there is a substantial gap between Penn State and everyone else in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But I think that gap is going to ultimately what does that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a hot take. No. I'm not telling any of our listeners anything they don't know. I feel like this is very standard knowledge. Yeah, they might shock me and get to the. We'll see. Yeah. There's really nothing in terms of regular season play. There's nothing left to say about Penn State. They are what they are. We know what they are. Yeah. Okay, you ready to move on to Pitt, or do you have anything else?
I'm ready to move on.
Okay, let's talk about Pitt and Louisville.
So Louisville wins 37-9. Killed them at home. Louisville had 505 total yards, 293 passing, 212 rushing. Pitt, 265 total, 190 passing, 75 on the ground with a good running back core too. So that's not what you want to see.
75 running. I mean, that was basically what Penn State's rushing core did in the first half.
Yeah.
Their rushing, they had like 45 yards rushing or something like that. It was just absolutely pathetic. But Pitt, I mean, they didn't turn that around for the whole game.
No, yeah. Holstein really, really struggled.
And they got hurt.
He did get hurt. He went 3 for 5, 51 yards and a pick, which that pick was terrible.
It was awful.
It was, he threw a pick in the end zone on the Louisville 7-yard line, which led to a field goal the other way. But it's points. I mean, and like I said before, weeks prior, when Pitt's defense isn't playing good, they're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
And
what happened? Yeah. The O-line screwed up and got Holstein hurt.
The O-lines. We've been saying it for weeks now.
And as of the recording of this episode, the last we heard he was still in the hospital in Kentucky with his leg in a cast. Okay. I don't even know where to start, Eric. I heard this stat yesterday. I have not told Eric this yet. This blew my mind. Pitt is the first team in 50 years, 50, to go 7-4 after starting 7-0.
Oh my God.
First team in 50 years. You can't make it up. The first team in 50 years to go 7-4 while starting 7-0. That and you know what happened? You know what that moment was? The second they played a respectable team in SMU.
Yep.
And then they continued that garbage with Virginia, who isn't very good. The West Virginia win was big for them, but oh my God. I mean, talk about a drastic, and I mean substantial, decline.
Yeah.
Across the board. You can't point at one thing. It's everything. Everything is the problem. The O-line is the biggest problem, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other problems.
Right.
Nothing is working.
Nope.
Nothing. Just miserable play.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not a big deal that Holstein got hurt. He'll be back next year.
Yeah, he's fine. He's a freshman.
He's fine. We obviously wish him the best.
Yeah.
But this season's a wash. It was a wash after the Virginia game.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. man.
Yeah.
Oh.
And after Holstein went down, Yarnell came in with 4 minutes left in the second.
He threw a pick.
And he threw a pick to Stanquan Clark, which was his second pick of the game because he picked off Holstein earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, they're at Boston College next week. Boston College is probably going to win that game because Bill O'Brien, he's still trying to get that program up and running in his first year, but he is a very respectable coach. And honestly, this might be a bit of a hot take. He was a very good NFL coach, too. The problem was when he tried to be a GM. That's where Bill O'Brien went wrong. But in terms of coaching, he's a very good coach. There's a real good chance he outcoaches Narduzzi next week and wins that game, too. So Pitt's going to go 0-5 to end the season. I'd say I'm sorry, Pitt fans, but I'm not. You guys, again, freshman quarterback, inexperienced O-line. Anyone who truly watched, like particularly that West Virginia game where they gave up 30-plus points, could see that this was going to come as soon as they started playing good teams like SMU and Clemson. But, they drank the Kool-Aid, as they usually do, I might add, Eric. As they usually do. And, Pitt is what we thought they were.
Yep.
We'll see. And honestly, what they always are.
Yeah.
Pitt is what they always are. There's nothing that they have shown you this season that can change that. So, we'll obviously we'll report next week. I'm not expecting anything interesting. We'll update Holstein's injury if there's anything to add regarding next season. But yeah, I really don't understand how this could possibly be a surprise.
Well, their defense also played terrible this game. It wasn't just the offense.
Yep.
The running back for Louisville, Isaac Brown, 13 carries, 93 yards, 2 TDs. He was just running through people, and it looked like they weren't even trying to tackle him.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was doing, but
I don't know either.
It wasn't good.
It was, yeah.
It was a real.
Desmond Reed, like he said, didn't have a great game.
No.
I
still think he's a good running back.
Yeah.
But he struggled. His team isn't good.
Desmond Reed, it pretty much is their offense outside of Holstein. So if you shut him down, you shut down, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. In Louisville, the spread was only 7.5, I think. So it's not like they were. It's not like Louisville was crazy favorites, but they just absolutely steamrolled. Yeah. So I guess the next question I have for you, Eric, what do you think this does with the ACC? Now that we kind of have a clearer view, right now, SMU and Clemson are leading the conference with 7 wins each. Miami is 6-1.
Yeah.
In conference. There's a real good chance that Clemson can make the ACC title game depending on the events of next week. And as we've been telling you for weeks, I truly believe in my heart that despite, and I gotta say, side note, watching Cam Ward a little bit, we're not going to talk about the game, but I watched Cam Ward. I think I'm starting to agree with him more and more on Cam Ward. I don't know if he's going to be a really good NFL quarterback, but he really is a strong college QB.
Mm-hmm.
But Miami's defense is average. I really feel Clemson is the best team in the ACC. They're the most complete. That doesn't mean any of their pieces are elite, but if you have the most complete team, that goes volumes, especially in an ACC where the competition is relatively weak. Miami is obviously ranked above them right now in the CFP poll, and they will continue to be because nothing crazy happened. But if Clemson can make the ACC title game, I think they have a real good chance at beating Miami. I think they have a real good chance at beating Miami.
Yeah, and at the top of the conference, SMU and Clemson, they both have tough games next week.
They do.
I know Cal isn't ranked, but SMU plays Cal. Then was beat Miami.
Cal is decent. Cal's not an easy win.
And then Clemson has South Carolina.
That's not an easy game either. South Carolina is decent. So yeah, we'll see who plays Miami, and that'll be big. So I'm telling you, watch out for Clemson. Watch out for Clemson. They are legit. They really are. But yeah, Pitt. There's nothing. 50 years.
It's just.
You guys reached ineptitude not seen in 50 years. Oh, man. Eric, it really does make me laugh. It fills me with humor like you wouldn't believe. I can't put it in words. Okay, let's talk about the. Unless you have something else to add about that.
I do not.
Let's talk about the big game.
Yeah, Ohio State, Indiana. So, Ohio State wallops Indiana 38-15. They had 316 total yards, 201 passing, 115 on the ground. Indiana struggled. They had 151 total yards, 68 passing, 83 rushing. That is not good. Christian Rourke was just getting killed back there.
Yeah.
His O-line played terrible.
Yeah, Curtis Rourke was broke.
Yeah, I mean, Cody Simon had 2.5 sacks. He played great. Yeah. This team just played really good all around. Caleb Downs with the punt return, which is
punt return. That special teams formation from Indiana on that play was embarrassing bad. Like, honestly, until the end where Ohio State started to peel away, it was special teams' fault.
Yeah.
That Indiana was losing that game.
The one where it hit Price right in the face, went through his hands, hit him in the face.
Yep.
Then they get the ball at the 5.
And punch right in,
Yeah.
It was again, Ohio State started to pull away at the end, but the first half to 3 quarters, it was Indiana's special teams' fault.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they had it.
They started off strong for opening drive with a touchdown, and I was like, you know what? Maybe Indiana's better than I thought they were. Maybe they're going to make this interesting. But then, reality came into play.
They only scored on the first and the last drive of the game,
which was garbage time. It's empty calories.
Nobody's in the game for Ohio State at that point.
Yep. It's just pathetic offensive performance.
Yeah, and I think Ryan Day had some he played like he called a good game.
I need this slander on Ryan Day to stop. I swear. I don't know if any of our listeners pay attention to like message boards and whatnot, but I was told yesterday about the existence of like message boards for each of these teams, and you should watch these people like in real time break down their sanity. I swear, like after Ohio State a couple years ago lost on the field goal miss by Ruggles to tie the game against Georgia, to win the game. I mean, the fans were like, fire Ryan Day. I mean, it's just really, really funny to look at these message boards. And people still kill Ryan Day. Guys, he has lost one game in the Big Ten to an opponent that isn't Michigan. Michigan is the only team in the Big Ten that he loses to. Outside of Michigan, he's lost one game in conference, and you're going to call him one of the worst coaches in the sport? He is legit. He's really good. I do not understand the slander. The fact that was the beatdown that it was against Indiana, I don't want to hear another word about Ryan Day.
Yeah.
I seriously don't. I don't. And it's not like they got killed by Oregon either. So the one loss I'm talking about was not substantial. It's because the quarterback didn't slide early enough.
Yeah.
So
look. And Oregon and Ohio State, they're going to play again in the Big Ten Championship. It's pretty much set in stone. They have a 100% chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State wins this game at a neutral site.
I would agree with that. We were texting about that last night.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I really think that on a neutral site, Ohio State wins.
No, they're not going to kill them like this.
They wouldn't. No,
they wouldn't be close because
yeah. I'm not saying it would be a blowout.
No, yeah, but
yeah. Again, as we've been discussing, there aren't any elite teams, including Ohio State.
Yeah.
There aren't like any unbeatable teams.
Right.
So I think this is Ohio State's year to really make some damage.
I agree.
Now, here's my question for you. They're going to play for a second time in the Big Ten title game. Will the committee have them play a third time? Will they arrange the bracket so that Ohio State plays Oregon again?
Well,
like, in my head, the worst thing that could happen to, like, ESPN, who airs these games, is for them to play again.
Right.
The ratings would be atrocious. No one will watch it because everyone's seen it twice.
Yep.
I mean, we would watch it to talk to you guys about it because we're fans and we love the sport. But I think a lot of mainstream casual fans are going to be like, we've already watched it.
Yep. It just depends how the Big Ten Championship goes, I think. If it's a
slaughter.
Which it's leaning towards it's not going to be.
I don't think it will be. I think both teams are legit.
I do too.
So I don't.
Ohio State's defense is insane.
Their defense is better than their offense. Also,
their offense is elite.
Their offense is very good. Yeah. Although I need to say this, Will Howard, you need to calm down. He was like at the end of the first quarter when at the break, Ohio State was about to punch it in at the beginning of the second. It was on the second or third play.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first quarter, Will Howard was like getting the crowd into it, and I was like, bro, you're losing. Like, calm down, man. Like I feel like he talks a lot of talk, and he is not a top 10 quarterback in the game. He's good. I'm not saying he's bad by any stretch. Don't misconstrue my words, but seriously, Will, I mean, chill out. You're the reason they lost against Oregon. Yeah. So, I don't know.
You can put that loss on two people. You can put it on Ryan Day also for not calling a timeout there.
That too.
But it doesn't matter. The game, it's over.
It's now, Cignetti. Do you still think Curt Cignetti is Coach of the Year?
No.
So who is Dion? I mean, seriously.
I guess. It's going to have to be Dion.
I mean, I feel that...
That's just a horrible loss.
I mean, I feel that an Indiana team who had never won 9 games in a season before, and they're going to finish with 11.
Yeah.
They're going to finish with 11 because next week they play Purdue. Mm-hmm. So they're going to win that game. A team that's 11-1 who had never won 9 games before, but the 11 games you win are against trash.
Yeah.
Is that worthy of Coach of the Year?
I don't think so. I mean...
but I think you can make a really good argument for it. They never won 9 games. They had never been better than 8-4. I mean, Colorado lost last night. Again, we're not going to talk about it. I wanted to because it's such an embarrassing loss. Kansas killed them.
Colorado didn't beat anybody either, though. So
they really didn't. And people, again, the frontrunners are Cignetti and Dion. So I feel like between the two, you have to go with Cignetti.
I feel like, now that I agree now.
I don't know, man. 11-1, but the 11 teams have, like, pretty much all losing records.
Yeah, pretty much.
Except for Washington, who's like 500. But everyone else has a losing record, and Michigan. Michigan and Washington are Indiana's 2 best wins, and they're both basically 500 teams. They're going to be bowl eligible. And everyone else is awful. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But he's probably going to win it.
Probably.
But yeah, I just...
You can tell that also, like, this win for Ryan Day is huge for him. You can tell he wanted to make a statement.
He did.
At the end of the game, with like 30 seconds left, he punches it into the end zone.
That was
sneak.
Because I was thinking about it. I was like, you're going to kneel.
Yeah.
Right? And then he didn't. But honestly, I think a lot of people are going to criticize him for that. I actually applaud it.
I do.
I applaud it because...
I like that because of what Cignetti said earlier in the week about Ohio State.
Did you see what the Ohio State Twitter account put out yesterday? They tweeted out, Googled it. In reference to Curt Cignetti saying, Google me. Yeah. I was like, that is the greatest response I've ever read in my life. I was like, that was so cool. Yeah, and I hate Ohio State, but I was like, nicely done.
Cignetti said, Google me, I win.
Yep.
That's what he said.
Yep. And I was like, props.
Yeah.
I was like, that is beautiful. And I hate Ohio State, so you know that says a lot coming from me. Mm-hmm. But I need to give that, it's probably an intern. Whoever that intern is who tweeted that out, you get an A+.
They had it up on the scoreboard, too.
Yeah.
Will Howard's on the sidelines putting out a cigarette.
Googled it. And they capitalized L in Google, bled.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Or L for loss.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Ohio State extends their win streak to 29 versus them.
That is...
They're 80-12 of all time versus Indiana.
80-12?
Yep. So
I mean, yeah, Indiana's a basketball school.
Yeah.
It is what it is. They had a great year this year. I don't know if it's sustainable.
I didn't like Howard's decision making on that pick though that he threw. No. He threw it right into traffic, trying to get it to Jelani Thurman. But
he was forcing the throw.
It was right in the hands of Jalen Walker.
He was forcing the throw.
It was a bad.
Although yesterday, Will Howard was not the quarterback making the worst decisions. So if you're ready to move on, I don't want to move on from your team.
No, I'm ready to move on.
Okay, let's talk about Ole Miss and Florida because man, I have some words for Mr. Jackson Dart.
Yeah,
Eric, let's start.
All right, so Ole Miss loses, and the Gators place 17-24. The Florida had 344 total yards, 180 passing, 164 rushing. Ole Miss played better on paper. 464 total, 323 passing, 141 rushing. Jackson Dart played. He had a rough. He played good.
He played well in the first half
until the game started to matter. He threw 3 interceptions, but one of them got called back. Back-to-back interceptions.
Yeah.
To lose the game.
His play in the fourth quarter was, and I swear this is not hyperbole, was some of the worst quarterback play I've ever seen in the history of the sport. His last drive, he threw 3 of the worst throws I have ever seen in my life. One of them should have been a pick. Mm-hmm. And then it got called back because of a penalty.
Yep.
And then he threw a horrible pick on the next play.
Yeah, before that, he launched it downfield, going all out, 39 yards into triple coverage.
It's a triple coverage. I turned to my dad and I was like, Dad, there were 3 defenders. And he was like, no,
there were 6 defenders on the right side of the field, one-on-one up top. What is he doing?
The moment was too big for him.
Yeah.
The moment was too big. But here's what doesn't make sense to me. The moment came too big against Florida?
Yeah.
Florida. Now, let's be fair to Florida. I thought Billy Napier, their head coach, I thought their head coach was probably going to get fired until I saw who their losses were against.
Yeah.
Their losses were against Miami, A&M, Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas.
Well, they had the toughest schedule in the CFB this year, so...
for a program that's still trying to, come back from, a couple miserable coaching moves, Dan Mullen was a mess and whatnot, but they actually, they won last week against LSU, and then this week was a big win for them. But I don't want to distract from the story, and the story is Ole Miss. And, I feel bad for Jackson Dart. He was after the first horrible throw on the final drive, where it was a penalty so before he actually threw the interception, they showed him crying on the sideline. Mm-hmm. And then to throw a horrible throw like that again, right after, they didn't show his face, or at least if they did, I didn't see it. But he probably was crying again. Yeah. That is such a brutal way to lose your playoff hopes. And their playoff hopes are done. It's over. You have 3 losses. You don't have a chance. It's brutal. That loss against Kentucky will haunt Ole Miss. The LSU loss, it happens, and LSU is respectable. But you can't lose to Kentucky, and you can't lose to Florida. Those are 2 horrible losses. Horrible. Yeah.
It wasn't just Jackson Dart. I know
it was large.
I know all the blame is going to be put on Jackson Dart.
The second half was all him. It really was.
Yeah.
I would argue that the second half, he was atrocious. If you guys watch the game, his throws were anemic. They really were. They weren't. He had such poor communication with his receivers that on the last interception,
10 yards over his head.
Yeah, because he thought that the receiver was going to keep running down the sideline. He did not know the playbook. Just middle school, they teach you that stuff, and he was screwing up. And again, I don't understand how the moment was too big for him against Florida. That just doesn't make sense to me.
But maybe this loss is good for the fans, because maybe now we won't have to see a blowout in the playoffs. So
yeah, because honestly, I was saying last week that if Penn State hosted Ole Miss, that Ole Miss was probably going to win. Now, if Ole Miss is vulnerable, man.
Yeah, they are.
So again, they're not going to be good now.
It's a bad game for Jackson Dart. Maybe he'll bounce back, but they're out of the playoffs anyway. So.
Next year, here's the thing: there is enough talent there that next year, I think he's going to be. Once he matures, and once he gets out of his own head, which I understand is easier said than done, but once he does that, I feel that there's a lot. I feel there's a lot to do with him.
Yeah,
I think he's really, really talented. But man, I'm sorry, Jackson. Sorry to be blunt, but you are the reason they lost that game.
Yeah,
I know that's hard to put on an 18, 19-year-old, but
to flip over to Florida.
Yeah.
their defense played good. 2 4th-and-1 stops.
Those were huge stops.
One in the first, and then one in the third and fourth quarter.
The one in the fourth quarter was
huge.
Yeah.
And then they also the muffed punt with 12 minutes left in the third by Micah Davis. That's just unfortunate. The sun was right in his eyes. But Florida recovered. They get 3 points out of it. And
honestly, despite Dart's performance up to that point in the second half, when they held Florida to 3 after that muff punt, I was like, my gut told me, I was like, I think Ole Miss is going to win this.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dart.
I mean, he had it. I mean, he had multiple opportunities. Because they, right after that first pick he threw, they punted it away, gave him another shot. Yeah. There was another pick. So, I mean, it sucks, but he's got
I think Dart will improve. I think Lane Kiffin, he is who he is at this point. I think he really is best when he's, Saban Jr., when he's working for Saban. As a head coach, he's solid, but he's not elite. Mm-hmm. But I think Ole Miss has the Penn State problem where they're not going to get anyone better.
Right.
Ole Miss is not going to get anyone better than Kiffin. Penn State's not going to get anyone better than Franklin. So you just have to ride them till they either retire or are so awful that you have no choice.
Yeah. They'll never be that awful, I don't think.
I don't think so either, but I mean, I guess it's technically a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see where Ole Miss what Ole Miss does. They have a legit offense. They really do.
Yeah.
We've been crushing Dart for the last several minutes, but their offense...
He didn't even play that bad up to that point. He had 323 yards.
Yeah.
2 TDs.
Yeah, but that second half was the reason they lost.
Though,
I can't imagine that they would, get worse.
Mm-hmm.
But what's tough is that they're in a conference where there's a lot of elite competition.
For sure.
So...
We'll see. And DJ Lagway... on paper, it looks like he didn't play that good.
He was
making some good throws.
What's interesting about Lagway is that he throws funny. Like his motion. I
know
it sounds weird, but the way he throws, he shifts his core a different direction than his shoulders when he throws. It's very odd, but I mean, it works. It's hard to argue with. It's hard to argue with results. What do you do? Quarterback rating is 66, meh. But 180 yards, 10 for 17 with 2 TDs and an interception. That's an okay game. It's not like he played horrible. He didn't play great. He wasn't atrocious. Most of their offense came from rushing the ball. Yeah. But, Lagway had a decent game.
I think that interception for Lagway was also a little bit of a fluke. I mean, it's on the receiver. Because he made a great throw. He changed his arm angle around the D lineman. He hit DK right in the hands, but he dropped it. And then John Saunders gets the pick. A great pick, by the way. One-handed interception.
Yeah.
But...
yeah.
Ole Miss got some work to do for next year.
I think Ole Miss has the worst one. The ones on the last drive, the interception that came back and then the actual interception, those are bad. The worst one, was the throw in triple coverage.
Yeah, I don't know what he's looking at.
I truly, I was
there were 6 defenders on the right side of the field.
Jackson, what are you looking at?
Buddy? Wasn't good.
We'll see what happens to Ole Miss moving forward. They're not part of this conversation now, at least in terms of the playoff. But they had a decent season.
Yeah, and that was Jackson Dart's first multiple interception game in 2 years. So.
That's impressive. That shows he was talent.
Right.
And again, the moment was too big for him. It was just odd that moment was against Florida.
Yeah.
Who isn't atrocious, but is not elite in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. You'd think that it would come against LSU or someone with more name recognition for football.
Well,
it happens.
Yeah.
That's it for me. What about you?
Yeah, that's all. Moving on to Oklahoma and Alabama.
That was an interesting game.
It was a wake-up call.
It was a wake-up call.
Oklahoma wins 24-3 at home. They had 325 total yards, 68 passing, 257 rushing. And then Alabama had 234 total, 164 passing yards, 70 rushing. Both these teams, Alabama really struggled. Ryan Williams, honestly, this game could have been closer, but it was due to penalties. It could have been 17-24 because Ryan Williams could have had 2 touchdowns. But he steps out of bounds on one of them, which you got to cash in from inside the 5.
That play.
Against Oklahoma. Come on. And then that one where he made that great catch in the end zone, gets a foot down, but it's called back for illegal touching because he went out of bounds. So, and And then Milroe,
his second half might have been worse than darts.
It was horrible.
3 interceptions in the second half.
Yeah, to start the second half, their very first drive, they went for a screen pass, this jump by the true freshman, Eli Bowen, and then they scored with a pitch play to Xavier Robinson. Yeah. Then the next drive, the second drive, he threw another pick, and it's a pick six to Kip Lewis. So
here's what's interesting to me. Brent Venables is the new coach at Oklahoma now. He was formerly the D coordinator at Clemson, and he has really revived that defense. Mm-hmm. What's been interesting, though, is that he's been there for years at this point, and he really has not developed an offense. His offenses at Oklahoma have been brutal. Since Lincoln Riley left, Oklahoma has not had a good offense. And as a result, Oklahoma really hasn't been able to keep step with the big dogs in the SEC. I mean, they lost to Tennessee, they lost to Texas, they lost to South Carolina, who's pretty good, Ole Miss, and Missouri. And none of those teams are awful.
Right.
So Oklahoma, hypothetically, isn't awful. But,
the SEC is really tough.
But they just do not have the defense to compete.
Right. They don't.
And so I expected a similar result against Alabama because of that. I expected Alabama to win this game.
Yeah.
Not because Oklahoma is a particularly easy opponent, but because they just don't have the offense to keep pace with Milroe and the rest of Bama's offense.
Looking at the games for this week, I didn't think we were going to be talking about this.
I did not think we were going to talk about it. I was expecting to talk about Colorado because I had a lot of hope in Kansas. And, and that hope ended up being proven right. But man, Alabama. Kalen, we were praising you. Seriously, I feel like we hate this guy, then we like him, now we hate him.
It's week to week with this guy.
It is week to week. I mean,
he just has to become more consistent.
That Vanderbilt loss was so awful.
Horrible. Missouri was horrible.
Missouri, they won like 34-0.
That's right.
South Carolina, honestly, in the moment, we all hated that.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, South Carolina's pretty good. So I'll give them a bit of a pass for barely beating South Carolina because South Carolina is respectable. But the Tennessee loss, that was pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
But then statement victories against Missouri and LSU.
Yeah.
Statement.
And then they come back and just lose this one?
Yeah. Bloodbaths against Missouri and LSU. And then that's what happens.
And then they get just walloped.
And you know what's a disgrace? We haven't seen the playoff rankings yet, Eric. Those come out on Tuesday. But as of the recording of this video, the newest AP poll has come out, and Alabama is first out at 13. Yeah. They have Arizona State below Alabama. How?
And that was a huge win for Arizona State. So
yeah, I mean, I just how did Alabama not tumble? That is insane to me. In my opinion, Eric, no 3-loss team can make this top 12. If I see a 3-loss team in the top 12, I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
No.
Like before the playoffs, if you have one loss, you're probably out.
Yeah.
This would do 12.
You allow 2.
Losses.
You allow 2. You cannot allow 3.
No.
3 is obscene.
If Ole Miss is out with 3, Alabama should be out with 3.
Agreed. I could not agree more.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss tumbled to 15. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's justified. Alabama, I'll be very curious. They're going to need help to get in because, look, Auburn had a big win last night.
Yeah, huge.
Huge win. So next week, Auburn at home, Alabama at home against Auburn. That's not a gimme win. Kalen, you better have your men ready. Because not only do you need to win that game decisively, but you need to get a lot of help.
Yeah.
To get back into the playoff. My gut tells me they don't make it. I just do not see.
I don't think they do. With the Alabama bias, though, maybe.
Maybe, but
I don't think they should be in.
But let's look at the. I would like to play this game with you, young man, Eric. So let's say all the teams above them, with the exception of Ohio State, win. Because obviously Oregon's going to play in the conference championship game against Ohio State.
Yeah.
So one of those two teams is going to lose. Everyone else here is probably going to win the rest of their games. With the exception of the Big Ten and SEC, which, if that doesn't speak volumes as to the quality of the Big Ten and the SEC. But Texas and Georgia are probably going to play each other in the SEC title game, and Oregon and Ohio State are going to play each other in the Big Ten title game.
Right.
Two of those four are going to lose. Everyone else here...
Well, and then Clemson and SMU and Miami as well.
Yeah, depending on which of those ACC teams. I forgot about the ACC.
Yeah.
So they're irrelevant. I'm sorry, guys. So the only way, because here's the thing, I don't see a reality where the loser of the Big Ten and the SEC title games are out completely. They'll drop, certainly, but I don't see a reality where they fall out.
I don't think so.
Because Georgia's 6. Do you really think the committee, if Texas wins that game, they're going to move Georgia out of the top 12?
Blowout.
But Georgia blew Texas out.
Yeah.
They blew Texas out by 15 at Texas.
Right.
And here's where Alabama's really going to get screwed over. The ACC, their 3 teams are 8, 9, and 12 respectively. Here's the problem. One of those two losers is probably going to fall. One of the losers is probably going to fall out. But where that hurts is that Arizona State, if they win the Big 12 title game, how can you leave them out of the top 12?
Right.
So that would make Arizona State hop up.
Yeah. This new playoffs is very confusing.
It's very confusing. That's why I'm struggling to explain it right now. I really am. I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best to explain it to Eric, but he's probably struggling like no one's business right now. But it's not his fault. I'm struggling. But I don't see how Arizona State is out of the top 12 if they win the Big 12 title game.
Right. And
how can you leave them out over Alabama? So I really don't see a reality where Alabama makes the playoff, and it's Kalen DeBoer's fault.
Yep.
It's Kalen DeBoer's fault.
Yeah, that's.
And I also have one more thing to say about the AP poll right now.
Okay.
No Big 12 team in the top 12.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awful.
Yeah.
It's so bad. Yeah.
Like that was a huge win for Arizona last time.
If you told me that the only chance the Big 12 had at a team in the top 12 was Arizona State, I would have laughed in your face. But that is the craziness of this season, Eric.
Yeah.
That is the craziness of this season. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have. What about you?
Just a few more things. So,
please.
Oklahoma held Alabama to the fewest points in 20 years.
I did see that.
And
I
then,
forgot to bring that up. You're right.
That's their first FBS win since September for Oklahoma. So,
but again, it's not. I don't think Oklahoma's awful. They're just in a conference that they're not ready to compete in yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Alabama's playoff hope should probably be gone after this.
I can't. I really don't see how you can leave Arizona State out.
No,
I don't see it.
Yeah.
If they win their next 2 games, the finale of the regular season and then the title game, how do you leave them out?
Yeah.
I don't see how you could. Yeah. That is Big 12. That is so interesting to me. I just I don't get it. Yeah. Also, what are your thoughts on Indiana at 10?
I don't mind it, just because they weren't that good coming into this game. I think they were overrated coming into the Ohio State game, because they didn't beat anybody.
Exactly.
I get they're undefeated, but they didn't play anybody. Ohio State was their first and only test.
I agree.
So
I'm with you 100%.
I think it's fine that they.
I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, honestly, I'm rooting for Clemson because I want to be proven right. Am I a bad person for preferring vindication over excitement? I don't know. This season is so crazy.
Yeah.
It is so nuts. Overall, what are your thoughts? Let me ask you this to end the show. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on how this bracket has played out? Do you think it's exciting?
The
12 teams with the domination of the SEC and the Big Ten, with the ACC starting to make a comeback in recent weeks. I just feel we have so much excitement. Yeah. There are so many good teams in the SEC and Big Ten that they're all cannibalizing each other now.
Yeah.
All the SEC teams have one loss.
Right.
Because They're all
losing to
each
each
other.
other. Yeah.
So it's really, really fun because it's so unpredictable.
I really like the 12-team playoff because
like
four teams, it wasn't enough.
Agreed.
If you lose one game, you're out.
Yeah.
And a lot of good teams have one loss.
Yeah.
So it didn't really give teams a chance to prove themselves because it's just the same 4 teams every year.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you.
I really like the addition with the 12-team playoff. It gives teams that don't small market teams a chance to kind of
more so than anything, more so than next week's games, more so than the conference championship games. I'm really excited for the first round.
Yeah,
because I think the first round is just going to be chaos personified.
Yeah,
it's going to be nuts, and I cannot wait for it as a fan of the sport. Mm-hmm. I cannot wait for it. Okay, that's pretty much all I have.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for episode 6 of Catching the Facts. As you listen to Eric and I lose our minds on the air, I hope you had fun listening. We'll be back next week with a lot of the rivalry games. We got Texas A&M. That's going to be a big game. I can't imagine we won't talk about that one. We're obviously going to talk about any updates with Penn State and Pitt.
Yep, Eli Holstein.
Yeah, Holstein. I doubt there will be any big updates on Penn State and Pitt, but we'll talk about them. Next week's going to determine the ACC title game and technically the Big 12 one. So there's a lot to happen. So really exciting stuff. Hope you'll join us for episode 7. Until then, this has been Catching the Facts. I'm your host, Dan Sisk.
And I'm Eric Schroeder.
We'll see you then.
Hey there, listeners. I'm Matt Boyer, station manager of WSVC Radio. If you like what you're listening to, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified with all of our newest updates. Every day, one of our shows is releasing a new episode. Stick around and stay tuned.